Hello everybody, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If this is the first time that you're watching me, hello, it is so lovely to have you here. So this video I'm going to be talking about my stay at the mental hospital, and just to remind you what season of my life that we're in, I'm in my Trisha Paytas sitting on the kitchen floor phase of my life. So if that's not what the content you're here to see, then join me in a couple months and I'm sure that I'll be thriving, getting my little Starbucks moment and taking walks like a healthy girl. But right now I'm very much still in the Trisha Paytas, being toxic, not really understanding that it is toxic, and just trying to do the best I can every day so that I stay alive, which is the most important thing for me, is just to make sure that I'm alive, because I haven't wanted to be. So yeah, this video is about the mental hospital. I'm going to be doing my makeup simultaneously while I'm talking about this. So yeah, and in true Alice in Nature, in case you don't know me, I was a costume actress for 3 years playing roles like Elsa, and then after that decided to be a daycare teacher. I'm the most childish girl on planet Earth. I have stuffed animals, and my actual bag is a Squishmallow bag that I would use every day. So in that fashion, I'm going to be demonstrating what happened to me using action figures. Hello, welcome to my life. Alright, so going through a lot of therapy, I've learned a lot about myself. So something happened to me in childhood. That's what happened to me in childhood. I got hurt. And I was fine for years, and then I met my first ever boyfriend. That happened here. So trauma happened, fine for years, had my first boyfriend. He cheated on me. That domino affected everything, tying me back to my initial trauma, right? Then I just healed through the breakup, which is so horrible for you to do. There are so many people who recently were like, you need to get over this, you need to move past it, you need to just get over it and get through the heartbreak of the situation. That's what led me in the situation that I'm in currently. Because what girls often do is they heal through the breakup, but they never heal through the trauma, which is the actual issue. The breakup is fine. You can break up with somebody and get better and heal and move on. But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter, because guess what? Bam, new trauma. It's still all connected. Unless you go back and heal this trauma completely, heal this trauma completely, heal this trauma completely, and then bam, new trauma's here, then there's nothing to go back to it to. So you really have to heal fully and completely, and I haven't been. So now I'm 3 traumas in, and this is my current relationship that I was in, and he cheated on me as well, which again created this domino effect all the way back, me realizing that I never fully healed from any of this. Show and tell time is over. Thank you, fairies. Okay, so, oh, and the biggest thing too is like between those times, there's like 4 and 5 years between them where I'm literally healthy, happy, nothing's happening, everything's cool, life is great. So, when I do go through breakups, when I do go through hard times, I really let myself sit in that, because literally the only way that you completely get through a breakup is to feel it. If you go off and smoke weed or go off and hang out with your friends and you distract yourself from that, it actually takes you much longer to heal than if you actually just sit in it. And there's a difference between sitting in something and feeling it, healing it, accepting it, getting through it, and just staying in that bitter, toxic, hard place. But another thing that people don't understand about trauma is that you're literally traumatized. Your brain doesn't work the same. Logically, without that, you're like, I want to be healthy, I want to move on, I want to do this. But it's like being in a car accident, right? If you're in a car accident, you slam into another car. Physically, you cannot get into another car. You're terrified of getting into that other car. Logically, I probably am not going to get hurt. I should do it, but the fear holds you in that place. Now, whether it's a physical trauma or an emotional trauma, you're stuck in that place. Yes, you want to heal, you want to move on, you want to get better, but you're so terrified. You're still stuck in that place, because in order to move forward means you're susceptible to be hurt all over again, and humans are just not trained to be able to handle with that without help. So let's talk about it. So I was with somebody for years of my life. It was the best, the healthiest that I ever was in my entire life. I do want to film a whole video about infidelity and how that rocked my world and how I'm getting through it and the steps that I'm doing with trained professionals that I feel like a lot of people could benefit from. Whether you choose to stay in the relationship with someone who hurt you or not is really not the point of infidelity. The point of healing after infidelity is to just focus on yourself, whether you choose to be with that person or not. Is to focus on yourself and to really try and figure out what happened in your life. Anyway, in October, I found out that the person that I was with for 4 years had been cheating on me, and the relationship was not sexual. It was painful. It was traumatic. And it hadn't been going on very long. It had been going on literally a matter of days that they had started a conversation with this person, but it was enough in my world to completely rock me, and it traumatized me in a completely horrible way. And the day that I found out, I lost my mind. I went crazy. And again, to do the picture, it wasn't even the fact that this initial trauma, I got cheated on right now. Yeah, that's a trauma within itself that I'm dealing with. But it's the fact that not only am I dealing with this trauma, but I'm also dealing with my boyfriend who cheated on me several times when I was 16. It triggered back. And I'm also dealing with my abandonment issues and the fact that I always felt like I wasn't enough because my parents left me at 6 months old. And gave me up to my grandparents. So this trauma was triggering, this trauma was triggering, this trauma, not to mention within that last year I had lost 4 people due to death in different ways. So I had so much trauma that was hitting me right in that moment, and it was too much for my psyche to handle. I had a seizure that night. A lot of what happened that night is still a blur. I've gotten back pieces and memories of it. I now understand that at the time I had a black eye, and I have a memory of what happened, why I got that black eye. And it really is a tough situation to talk about. I want to do a full video about it at some point, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for my mental health today. So anyway, I had a seizure that night, and the doctors told me it was due to the stress. So I went to the doctors, had a seizure. When I had a seizure, I lost my memory. I didn't remember anything. I called my best friend, who, her and her boyfriend took me to the hospital, and I'm so thankful for them doing so. They took me to the hospital, found out that I had a concussion, that I had hit the back of my head, and I had a seizure. I spent a couple days trying to get my memory back, and I'm glad that I made, I wouldn't say that I'm fully recovered. There's so much that I lost memory-wise, so much that I still don't remember. But, you know, I'm trying the best I can. And then as soon as I went through that, I went right back to work, was working 15-hour days. So I was just working constantly, not thinking about the infidelity, not thinking about the stress that I went through with my seizure, not letting myself heal from my seizure. And continued. You know, was going to work, going to bed, waking up, not dealing with the trauma, not dealing with any of it. And then that leads us to December. Me and my partner at the time were just not in a good place. Like, I couldn't talk to him without screaming at him. I couldn't talk to him without being so hurt. I was so traumatized, I can't even explain to you. I was literally in the fetal position on the floor, screaming and crying as soon as I got home. Every single day, literally screaming out at the top of my lungs because of the pain that I was in. I couldn't breathe. I was gasping for air every single night. I was screaming. I was so beyond traumatized, so beyond. I've never experienced something like that in my entire life. It was worse than dealing with any death, worse than dealing with anything, because I've never trusted anyone the way I trusted this person ever in my whole life, ever. And the fact that this person could literally destroy me was just so heartbreaking. And it still is so heartbreaking. And it's something that I'll be recovering from for the rest of my life. I now know that the situation caused me PTSD that I'll have for the rest of my life. I've never had PTSD. I've had PTSD from, you know, abuse that I was in when I was 18, but I never had PTSD caused from an emotional response. Now I have to deal with that for the rest of my life because somebody decided to be selfish with their actions and with my heart. And I still don't know how to accept that. Anyway, leads us up to December. I was talking to him constantly about him moving out. I couldn't be in the same environment with him and heal and move on. I was so hurt. Seeing him every day was just triggering. Every time I seen him, I was so angry and upset and confused and hurt, and I wanted him there because of the toxicity of it. Truly. Like, I couldn't fathom him not being around me because of my abandonment issues. But I couldn't stand being around him because I was so traumatized by him that I didn't want to be anywhere near him. So I finally got to the point where I kept asking him to move out. I asked him to move out the day that it happened, but he didn't want to. He wanted to stay. He wanted to work on things, and I wasn't willing for that. But I had to go to work every day, and it wasn't really something that we had time to talk about. So, bam, here's December. It is days before Christmas at this point. We finally get to the point where we decided that he's going to move back into his mom's house, and I'm going to live in my house, and we can continue talking and supporting each other as friends through the trauma that we experienced, but we are not together. And we were going to move out together that weekend. Well, when I'm at work during the day, I get a call. Apparently he had started loading some stuff into the car, you know, small stuff, box of hats, whatever. We were behind on rent a couple months. We were living with my grandparents. My grandparents couldn't afford their rent, so during COVID we moved back in with them to help support them. My grandmother seen that he took some of the stuff out to the car, and they started fighting. So they got to the point where he had to take all this stuff right then and there because that's what my grandparents said that was what was going to happen. So he got all this stuff, brought it into his mom's house, and I got home at the end of the day completely unaware of anything that was happening. Walked into the place, and furniture was moved around. Everything was just moved around, and it was so painful. It still is so painful to think about how I felt coming home. You know, you spend 4 years of your life building something, hanging up photos on the wall, choosing where a dresser is gonna go, decorating a place that you think is gonna be yours, and coming home at the end of the day and just seeing things gone was devastating. And I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle what happened to me. I couldn't handle my seizure. I couldn't handle anything at that point, so I ended up contacting somebody. And I had full intentions of picking up a very harmful substance to kill myself with. So I grabbed my stuff and I left, and I walked to go and meet this person. And on the way there, again, put in context, it's December 20th. And I decided on the way to walk to go and meet this person that it wasn't worth it. That I had a very highly emotional response in that moment. To give context also, I let the person that I was newly broken up with know what my intentions were. And honestly, like, I'm thankful that I did, in a way. And in other ways, I'm obviously not. But what happened was, on the way there, I decided that was stupid and that I would have an emotional reaction, and that, like, I needed just to think about things. I work as a daycare teacher, so at this time I knew that my job was to get the kids from the daycare presents. So I went to the Dollar Tree instead, and I got gifts for my children. I got Christmas books for them, and I bought them, and I went home with them in my bag so that I could wrap them. When I got home, the cops were outside my house. The cops were outside my house, my grandparents were outside my house, my ex-partner was outside my house. They were all waiting for me. Explained to me that this person had called the cops worrying about my health, and at that point they basically gave me the option of whether I was going to the mental hospital or not. I explained to them that I felt like I just had a very emotional reaction, but honestly at that point I didn't know what to do. I was so toxic. I was so tired of being horrible. I worked so hard to be loving and beautiful and amazing, and then this person just took it all away from me because he wanted to be selfish, and I didn't want to be anymore. So when they came, ultimately I did make the choice to go, but I also kind of wasn't given a choice because I was so emotionally distraught that they were worried about me. So had to be strapped down in the ambulance, taken to the hospital. Mind you, I don't have health insurance, anything. So, it was very traumatic. Got taken to the hospital, got put into, this is really hard. I haven't voiced any of this. I don't even think my partner knows a lot of this stuff. I got strapped in the ambulance and taken to the hospital, and then I got put into this section of other people that were either being arrested or whatever, and I was in there for a while, and I remember it was just the worst time of my life. I was calling my partner, begging them to let me out. I was in the hospital so they could like screen me, see if I had taken anything. I hadn't. And it was really scary. It was really scary. So, yeah, I don't know. It was a lot. And I was in this hospital room. I may have some pictures that I might insert. Anyway, they put an IV in my arm, drew my blood. It was horrible. I'm a baby, if you guys don't know. Like, I'm a baby when it comes to pain, when it comes to anything. Like, I hate getting my blood drawn. I faint whenever I get my blood drawn. I fainted in the hospital when I got my blood drawn. It was not fun. It was not cool. And I met, there was this male nurse who I met. And I really truly remember him so much. I made the mistake also of telling them that I had an eating disorder, and I struggled with it. So they like watched me eat, watched every time I went to the bathroom to make sure I wasn't throwing up, which really was my fault. I shouldn't have said anything. That's the thing too, is I truly just wanted to get better. I knew that I was literally losing my mind, and I didn't have insurance, so it's not like I was ever a choice for me to go to the mental hospital until I was forced into it. But once I literally had no choice, I was like, well, I better make the best of it because, like, I need help, and I knew that I needed help, and I wanted to get better so badly. I was so tired of being in this place, So, anyway, I told them, and it was stupid because me peeing in front of a, 6-year-old black woman was not helpful towards my mental health at all. And you're going to see a theme in this video because a mental hospital was not helpful towards my mental health at all, which is funny because even when you think you're doing the right thing for you, oftentimes it's actually more harmful than just not doing anything. Anyway, I met this man in the mental hospital, or not in the mental hospital, I'm still at the hospital at this point, waiting to be taken to the mental hospital. And this man, he was, I don't know if he was a doctor or a nurse, but he basically told me that he went through a very similar thing where he went through a breakup with one of his ex-boyfriends and he didn't see a point in living anymore. And he told me a lot of really beautiful things, but the main takeaway of it was we don't get to choose what our life is or how people treat us or the things we have to go through, but we get to choose our reaction and how long we stay in those places, and we get to choose life, and we get to walk out of it if we want to. And I'm so thankful for that man, because right after that I wrote a letter to myself promising that I wasn't going to stay in this completely traumatized place, and promising myself that I would try my hardest to try and get better and try and get to a better place. And I'm not going to say that 100%. I've stuck to that every single day. You know, some days I have days where I do go back on my promise to myself and I stay in a bitter place, but that's completely normal with the method that I'm using with trained professionals to get through infidelity and the traumas that infidelity handles you. It's so difficult because, like, people who don't understand trauma related with infidelity and how you get through that oftentimes tell me what I'm doing is toxic or what I'm doing is not okay, but literally trained medical professionals do this and it has over a 98% success rate. So I'm gonna listen to them, girl, and I'm not gonna listen to these people who literally have no idea what they're talking about and who've never gone through what I've gone through in my life. So, you know, you gotta pick and choose your battles. But anyway, I was there all night, got fed breakfast. I got transferred the next day to the mental hospital at 9 o'clock. Again, back in the ambulance, back to a different place. On the way to the ambulance, I met another guy. This guy was 19 years old and he was very nice, and he was an EMT. And he basically told me that before he met his wife, he went through a very similar experience that I went to, and that if I got help, that he knew that I would be okay. He asked me what I did for a job, said that it was amazing that I could work with daycare teachers, and recommended that I do shroom therapy because it's really good for PTSD, and it seems like I had gone through a lot of it in my life and in my childhood. So then I'm at the mental hospital place, and my parents are actually there, which I'm really, really glad that they decided to come to the mental hospital because I got to see them, because the mental hospital that I was at didn't allow any visitors. My grandparents are in their 80s, so, you know, they're not, the only option they had was like a virtual visitation, and like they're 80, they don't even understand how to text somebody, let alone do visual virtual visitation. So I'm really glad that they came and I got to see them when I was getting admitted to the mental hospital. A lady came in, asked me a bunch of questions. I, you know, answered honestly, which was my biggest mistake, honestly. I did, though, because I wanted to get help. And I didn't want to lie. I didn't want to get out as fast as I could. Like, I didn't. And my mom was begging me to just tell them that I didn't want the help, that I was fine, so that I could be out in time for Christmas. But that's just not how it was. At this point, it's like the 22nd or the 23rd. So I get to the mental hospital, I'm evaluated, and then the evaluation took forever. Like, I got there at 9 o'clock. I didn't get into my room until 1 o'clock. So they evaluated me. A bunch of people came back and asked me the same questions over and over again. They fed me lunch at some point. And then they issued me back to the detox area of the mental hospital. The ward that I was in was mostly for alcoholics or people who was like withdrawing off substances or whatever, which I feel like that is just not where I needed to be. But I also understood that it was Christmas. So there's a lot of people in the adult ward that was in there for drugs and alcohol who just got too drunk or too fucked up on the street. And there wasn't a lot of people actually in there for like actual like mental health distress. took what I could get, you know? Anywho, I got put in a room with this person. Her name, oh, I shouldn't say names. I won't say names. I don't really remember their name anyway. I'm pretty sure it was a male. I didn't really have a lot of interactions with this person. They were asleep most of the day, most of the time that I was in the room. They didn't come to really any groups when we had groups. And I was just thrown into my room at like 1 o'clock. Nobody told me anything. They just told me to put my stuff in my room, and I was just kind of sitting on the bed waiting for something. I waited there all day. And then I just went to bed that night. Nobody talked to me at all from that point on. I went to Denver Springs, and I really would not recommend it if you live in Colorado. It was the dumbest experience I've ever experienced in my life. I went there because I wanted help. I needed help, and I didn't get that at all. And nobody told me what I was supposed to do. I didn't even get dinner my first night that I was there. Like, you're paying thousands of dollars to be there a day. I think it's close to $1,000 that you're paying a day to be in there, and they didn't even give me dinner or let me know about dinner or tell me where dinner was or anything about that. And like, I had gone through a traumatic experience, and I had literally just dealt with the cops, so I wasn't going to say anything or do anything that was going to get me in trouble. The next morning, oh, by the way, somebody comes in all night, like every 30 minutes, to like check your vitals and talk to you about things. So it's just very like unsettling. You're in a room with somebody that you don't know. I didn't have any clothes, any blankets, like nothing. It was really like awkward and intense and weird. They take your phone right away. I'm thankful they let me keep my nose piercing in the adult unit. Other than that, it was weird, stupid. The next day I woke up, and I think somebody woke me up for breakfast, and I like woke up and got ready and brushed my teeth and washed my face and went out there, and we had breakfast, and I should say my breakfast by myself in the cafeteria. And then we walked back into the other area. All of the doors had like big old locks between them. You walk into the common area, and then there's just people kind of sitting there. And the thing that irritated me so much about this place is there's no communication, nothing. I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing, what my day would look like while I was there, what I was supposed to be doing, when I was going to get fed during the day. I had no schedule, and I hated it. And I was just so confused. So I looked at the board, and the board had like, they had like a huge chalkboard that had like what you're supposed to be doing throughout the day. And I was like, yes, thankfully, like I get to know what I'm doing. I walk up to the board, and like half of it has been like set on or like rubbed up against, so like all of the words were super hard to make out. I had to like really squint. And I have my mental health journal that they gave me when I first got there, and I like wrote down the schedule as the best that I could make it out, and there's huge chunks and like things circled that I wasn't sure what they were, that I was trying to figure out as I went along, which come to find out, none of that made any sense anyway. Like, all of the stuff that was up there, like, it would be like music therapy. And when I actually did figure out the schedule, music therapies, like, everything was just thrown whenever. Like, nothing actually followed the schedule that we ever got anyway. So it was like such a waste of time to even try to figure out what was going on. Another thing that really, really made me angry about this place is that they had a time slot for PE or gym, but oftentimes people just wouldn't come and get us to go to the gym. We would ask people like, hey, are we doing gym today? They'd be like, oh, not today, because we moved one of the therapies to that time slot, so no, you can't work out, which is so infuriating, because when you get all your rights taken away from you, sometimes working out is all you have to feel normal, to feel like a normal person, and you can't even do that. So it was very irritating. The groups that I went to, all of them were literally like mindfulness meditation groups. I had one where we had to like lay on the floor and look at the ceiling and like think about what was going on. Truly, I don't think there was one single group that I had the entire time that I was there that I found useful, because the thing about being mental, and that's the thing too, is I went to a very mental health friendly high school. I went to Endeavor Academy, and I knew all this stuff. I know, when you go through a traumatic time, you take a walk, like I said, to bring you back the visual, this was my last trauma, this was my other trauma, right? During those 4 years, I was very much like, I'm sad, better go take a walk. Oh, I want to hurt myself, better go and paint a picture. I knew my coping mechanisms already. I had a highly emotional state that I couldn't control, and now I know I have BPD, which would have been great to know earlier on, because then in that heightened moment I would have known what to do instead of ending up in the mental hospital and making stupid choices. But that's why we have to learn, and that's why we have to grow. I sat down with my therapist on the third day that I was there, and I was like, my biggest concern is getting diagnosed. And she was like, well, just so you know, most people here don't get diagnosed. Like, and I was like, that's my biggest thing. And she was like, girl to girl, let's have this conversation. And so we had the conversation, and I basically told her that, like, I'm a daycare teacher and, you know, all this stuff. And she right away got me with the therapist, and we sat down, which nobody else got to do. My therapist literally only was my therapist and I think one other person's therapist. Everybody else had this other therapist who was never around, was never talking to anybody. She would run in the hallways and everyone would be like, hey, we need to talk to you, we need to talk to you. And she would literally book it as fast as she could across the hallway. People there were just horrible and rude, and they treated us not as people. The entire time that I was there, not one time did I get asked, but except for with my therapist, what I did for a job, who I was outside of this position. They don't ask you that. They don't care about what you do or who you are. They don't care. You are just a patient in there that's crazy and lost their fucking mind that they have to be careful around. My third day there, though, I finally met with a therapist, and I had, I think, like a 2-hour conversation with him where we kind of just talked about my triggers and what was going on and everything. And they told me that I had BPD, or and so they slapped that onto my diagnosis form, as well as ADHD, and I could have the possibility of having bipolar disorder as well. So I had all these new diagnoses, as well as, you know, PTSD. So I have all these diagnoses where previously all I had was depression. So that was a fun impression, cool to get my hands on. Now I do want to do a whole video about me learning about my BPD, but it's something that's so stigmatized that when I heard it, I was like, I can't have that. I'm a daycare teacher. I can't have that. Like, I won't be able to work in my field with that. So I didn't pay attention to it because I was so terrified of getting diagnosed with it. So I kind of held it as far away from me as I possibly could. So yeah. I don't know, I met some cool people there. One person that I met was really nice, and he was really cool, and he had been going through life as well. I don't want to talk about these people's stories. I do want to mention one girl in particular in case she ever sees this video. Her name was Sarah, and she was a patient there, and she was so cool, and I loved her so much, and she never freaking emailed me, and I'm so sad about that. And I really hope someday that we can communicate again, because she was pretty cool. Anywho, I met some people, spent my time there. There was so much time between groups that there was really, like, nothing to do. And it was really stupid and boring, and I kind of hated it. There's just so much time to just sit around and do nothing. And me, that's the thing, is, like, my biggest fear in the world is to be trapped, which is a huge part of, like, my past relationship and the traumas between my past relationship, and why things started to get so toxic is because, like, I'll try to leave and they won't let me. So me being trapped in a mental hospital was my worst fucking fear, and I would just sit there and, like, it's so stressful because you can't leave, you can't walk out, like, you're literally trapped and there's nothing you can do. I grew up with my brother in and out of jail my entire life, and I always thought that would be the worst thing in the world, which is to be trapped somewhere. And here I was, trapped somewhere that I couldn't get out of. It was horrible, and I would literally just have anxiety, panic attacks, because I just thinking about how I couldn't get the fuck out of there. And I sat down with my, like, he's not, I don't know what he is. I think he's like the psych ward, I don't know. But you would sit with him once in a while and he would like determine if you were okay to leave or whatever. And on my third day, he was like, you can leave if you want, like, you're okay to go. And I was like, all I've done is lay on the floor and meditate a little bit. Like, what are you talking about? I'm okay to go. So I decided to stay longer than I needed to because I wanted to get something out of it. I spent a lot of time just writing. And at my third day, this is where shit got fucked up. I met with a nurse finally. I don't know why this wasn't something that was done initially. It definitely should have been, and it's very dangerous. And Denver Springs, you're so unprofessional for this, and you literally are like put so many people at risk. I went into the nurse's station, and they were like, "Hey, so like this is just, normal questionnaire. Like, have you had any outbreaks? So I'm sure you have it, to like strep throat or RSV." The flu, and I'm like, I'm a daycare teacher. All of them, every single one of them. RSV literally broke out in my daycare just 2 weeks ago. Like, every single one of them, you went down the list. All of them. All of them. All of them. The fact that I wasn't tested first, the fact that other people hadn't been tested is just so negligent, so irresponsible, so frustrating. Anywho, so she was like, oh. And I ended up being taken out of my room, being put into a different room, an isolation pod. And they were like, well, we have to test you for all of these things. I was there all night with nothing being done except my vitals being checked. They did give me my phone back during this time because I was in isolation and I couldn't go to any of my groups or anything. I did ask to be brought my assignments, so I was able to like do my assignments while I was in there. Anyway, the next day, they literally didn't test me for over 72 hours. And when they tested me, it took a matter of 30 to 45 seconds to test me for strep, RSV, COVID, and all the other ones. It blows my mind. Anyway, I was in there for like almost 2 days, just hanging out, waiting to get my test results back. This is after Christmas. Oh no, I think it was the day right before Christmas was then when I got let out. And then I finally was free to walk around and go out and conversate, and at that point I was so excited too because I hadn't seen anybody or been able to talk to anybody in over 72 hours, which is not a lot of time. I know there's people that literally go to jail and are in the isolation for way longer than that, and what I went through is nothing compared to I'm not saying, but it was a lot for me. And I was excited to talk to people, so I went and I talked to people, and I made friends, and I chatted with people, and I met some really cool people, and it became kind of like a family. We were all able to talk to each other and to conversate, and it was just really nice and really lovely. And then on Christmas Day, they brought around a little cart with like presents, and we all opened them, and they were like socks, which was really cute. I think I still have my socks somewhere. And it was just really nice. They brought hot chocolate, we sang carols, we went outside for a smoke break that night, and we all made snowmen, and we had a snowball fight, and we were watching Christmas movies. It was like weirdly the most beautiful Christmas I think I've ever had in my life. Just being with strangers who have all went through the same thing. We're all understanding and empathetic, and it was just so beautiful. And I'll never take that for granted. I think I ended up getting out the day after Christmas, and my ex-partner came to pick me up. Sorry. It was really beautiful. I don't know. Emotional. At some point, I also forgot to say this, at some point I seen a trauma therapist, and he was able to be like, whoa, you've gone through a lot of trauma. He explained that system that I just set up with those things and explained why that was happening to me and we went through some trauma therapy, and I ended up seeing him after I got out of the mental hospital for outpatient programming, and he really was the one to do the most in that whole mental hospital. Other than that, they were unprofessional. What I could say, just things that I didn't say in my initial story, just to wrap this up. Every single day when the day staff would leave and clock out, which was 7 o'clock every day, and then night staff would come in to take over their shift, the night staff would be completely confused. Like, the day staff would come and take my pulse, take my vitals, and then like 10 minutes later the night staff would come in to do it because they didn't have records that it had been done, because everything was just fucked up. Nobody knew who was supposed to be on shift, who wasn't supposed to be on shift. Where paperwork was, nobody knew whose names anybody was, nobody knew whose rooms had been checked. As soon as the night staff would come in, people would come through our rooms with little flashlights, ransack all of our stuff, make sure we didn't have too many towels floating around in the rooms. And you could hear them yelling in the front office, in like the middle office part that separated our two units, just talking about how they didn't know where the paperwork was, nothing was put any place, and instead of calling anybody to make sure anything, they just kind of redid everything or kind of fuck shit up. Like, they were just very unprofessional when it came to things. Like I said, I never knew what I was supposed to be doing. There was people who were in my unit who never went to a single group and still got out. Nothing was being paid attention to. I told them very early on that I had an eating disorder. Never once was my food looked at or made sure that I was eating, which I felt was very negligent. I got looked at originally to make sure, I mean, I had a lot of bruises on me already because of what I was going through in my relationship. So those were all written down, but after that I never got checked, which is not a normal thing. You're supposed to be checking at a mental hospital to make sure your patients aren't making new bruises on themselves or hurting themselves. Never was checked, and nobody I was with was ever checked. The person who decided how long we stayed there was completely rude. There was 14 people from my stay that filed complaints on him, and if you actually go onto Google reviews, he's so highly reported on that site, and he's still working there till this day. He was completely rude, never asked me my name, never asked anything. There was things that I told him where I'd be like, I don't know, I'm just really traumatized. And he'd be like, no, you're not. Like, literally an insane person, an insane guy. And one day when I was in isolation, he came in to check in on me, because once a day he would come in and literally treat you like a number. He'd be like, rate your depression today, rate your whatever today. And there'd be days where I'd be like, well, what does that mean? Like, what do you mean rate my depression? Like, I think the first day he ever asked me that, I was like, what does that mean? He was like, just rate your 1 through 0. Just give me a number. Just very like, and I was like 0, I guess. And he was like, that's not true. Obviously you're here, so it's not 0. And he was just very rude. And he was like, there was like 5 questions, like, how are you hearing voices? Are you sad today? Just 5 questions, and he would just try to get them done as fast as possible. And one day when I was in isolation, I was like, hey, do you think you can put my drug result screening in my case file? Simple question. Because while I was in there, too, I was, like, looking at my rights and making sure that I was being treated right, and there's a lot of things that they did that just was fucked up. And so I was like, can you add my drug screening in my results? Because, you know, I never actually made an attempt, and I want that shown in my file. And he was like, so irritated that I had the audacity to ask a question that was literally my legal right to ask him to do so. Literally an insane person. Anyway, I never signed any consent papers to be there, and they were very upset with me for that. I was like, I'm not signing anywhere, that I'm staying here. I'm not going to do it. I do not give permission to be here. I got 5150'd. I do not give permission to be here. I never signed anything, and they were so irritated at me for that fact, but it was my right. So yeah, at the end of the day, the mental hospital didn't do anything for me. I feel like it way triggered me more. And unfortunately now, understanding and coming grasp with my BPD, I understand that literally going through a 5150 state, I could be dealing with the trauma from the mental hospital for the next 4 years. 4 to 6 years. is how long it's going to take me to come out. Oh, it's different for everybody. I'm really trying to put the work in. Hopefully I can do it in less time, but the trauma from being in the mental hospital is going to take a lot of time to get out of, and it's going to be hard. But anyway, I suggest if you do need help, not to go to a mental hospital. Honestly, I think that you should do your research, if you are on substances or drugs, to find a good rehab, because a lot of times that's the solution. And maybe a sober living community, maybe just going and staying with a friend or a sister for a while, or if you do choose to go to a mental health hospital, make sure that you are in the right place. Make sure you're getting the right treatment for what you're actually in there for. Look at the reviews, look at what's going on. Make sure that you're going to be taken care of. Do the research. And I know a lot of us don't have the choice. Sometimes we literally have an emotional breakdown, and we don't get the choice of where we go. But if you are in a situation where you're wanting help and you're trying to reach out, then there are a lot of places that you can go that are literally just like breaks away from places. And instead of you having to go to a mental hospital where they traumatize you and it's a very traumatic experience, you can just go to one of these like resorts where it truly is just like a vacation away. Because a lot of people with especially BPD or emotional regulation problems, we have very high emotion, like it's wah, and then wah, I'm in a mental hospital because I'm so much. And a lot of times we really just need in that moment to just take a couple days in a different environment, and then we're able to look back and be like, oh, that was silly. Next time I go through that, I could go through DBT therapy and, try and do my coping mechanism so I don't end up that way. But a lot of times we don't get all the time, so it's not something that we're addressing constantly. Like, again, with me, like, yeah, I went through this thing that was crazy, but then 4 years, nothing happened. So, like, you think you're fine, you think you're good until the next trauma happens, and then you're right in that crazy place that you promised yourself you'd never be in. But that's because you're never actually addressing the trauma. And now, knowing that I have BPD, I'm able to really understand what I'm doing, and it's really been such a blessing on my life. I'm thankful that I got diagnosed, because it's such a blessing on my life to be able to look back and be like, wow, all of those times I thought I was just being crazy or emotional or sensitive, like, no, that's just who I am. It's part of my disorder, and these are the things I can do to be better about it in the future. So anyway, I'm going to do a video about coming to terms with my BPD, talking about what it is. But if you've watched this video about me going to the mental hospital, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. It's a long old video, so I hope you enjoyed it. I know I will enjoy it with a bowl of popcorn in a couple years when I'm a healed, healthy girl who's, learned about herself and is hopefully in a better place. But for right now, this is what it is, and I hope you enjoyed my mental breakdown. The series continues, and I love you guys so much, and have a good day. Bye! Also, finished makeup look. I did my flowers very messy. Oh my gosh, my whole makeup looks really crazy. But that's what happens when you do your makeup and you talk and you're not really paying attention to what's going on. Alright, goodbye. Have a good day.